Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to SKG Pro Series here for round 6 at Spa-Francorchamps. I'm Owen Baldero and I will be taking you through all of today's action. Unfortunately, you cannot see me. That is because I have had to make a little bit of a makeshift setup today. I'm actually streaming, I'm currently moving house and I am streaming from my grandparents' kitchen. So I have had to make a little bit of a makeshift setup. So we've had to sacrifice the face cam at least for today. But let's talk about today's race. We are here at Belgium, 19 corners, the longest circuit on the Formula One calendar, 2 DRS zones for our drivers to contend with in today's race. And of course, that all-important Sector 2 will decide whether some drivers today get pole position or if others start in the lower ranks today. As here we go into qualifying, we have drivers now coming out of the pit lane for their first runs of the session. Let's get everything up that we would need. As whoa, holy game freeze there. My game just had a huge moment. It's now a big gaggle of cars coming out. Pretty much the entire grid is out. The first on the track is gonna be one of the Williams, I believe. Here we go. It is silly Sly Guy first out on track, making his way through this difficult middle sector that we see. There is plenty of time to be gained through here. Of course, most drivers going to be running close to 0-0. As we see the Williams warming up his tyres, but most drivers going to be running close to 0-0 wings today, so this middle sector, it'll be difficult to keep the car in check through here, but with the quality of drivers we have in the race today, I don't imagine that should be too much of an issue for most of them. And then, of course, we head to the final sector, which only has one braking zone and 3 turns if you count that as a turn as well. It's more of a curve than anything. And then, of course, you've got this left-hander, and then you head towards the bus stop chicane, one of the most iconic corners in Formula One. As now, here we go. Silly Sly Guy starts his first of the session, swinging out wide. Towards the line he goes, he crosses it now, and this is the beginning of his lap using a little bit of ERS plus a DRS. Through the first corner he goes, going tight to the wall, going as far to the left as he can, and then he'll be using a little bit of energy towards Eau Rouge. And then you just slight flick of the wheel. These modern Formula One cars, of course, can go completely flat out through Eau Rouge, which some of the older generations of cars couldn't. Oh, we are on standings. There we go. We have been on standings. Whoops. Okay, as now, Silly Sly Guy through the middle sector. And now to the right-hander we go. Lovely stuff through there, getting on the power nice and early. And then you want to really abuse the curb on the right there. Lovely stuff from Silly Sly Guy. And then pull on, of course, just a downshift, keeping your car as tight as you can. And then through the right to the left. Need to make sure you keep your line nice and clean through there, as you can very easily invalidate on that curb there or lose plenty of time flicking the wheel to the right. And then it's a 113, 131 in the first 2 sectors. This is looking pretty handy from the FST Williams so far. And now just going to be a slight movement of the wheel, nothing too major. And then to the bus stop chicane, one of the biggest braking zones on the track. down to second gear. Then you just want to make sure you keep it clean through there. Don't take too much curb. You can scrub plenty of times up to the line. Silly Sly Guy sets a 140.620. Josh Rothwell immediately goes faster on a 140.473. Alejandro Loureiro goes even faster. It's going to be one of the Alpines next up to the line. Thomas Kokeni puts in a 140.3. Now with Dennis Langrock we go to the line. He comes, race winner last time out to 140.395. Third place for him on this third run. As we will now move to Tom Wolfgram for ET8 as he comes towards now the bus stop chicane. Drivers putting in plenty of times. 148 from Louis Drager. Giacomo Giletti putting in a 49. Simon Equestri putting in a 41.1. And then Tom Wolfgram puts in a 40.5. But current pole sitter is AMR's Alejandro Loureiro on these first few laps. As now we go on with Florian Van Zelter, a 113.1, running at a very similar pace to, I believe, running at a very similar pace to the driver we watched on our first lap, Silly Sly Guy, down in 13th at the moment. Now here we go, keeping it nice and clean through here. He's going to box. He's not going to finish that lap. He's abandoning it. So he will be the one of only two drivers to have not set a time in this session. The other being Harrison Holmes, who we see is on an outlap at the moment. Now entering the third sector. He will set a time in a few moments' time. He will go on his first flying lap. As everyone else on slowdown laps now, tyres generally not going to be holding out for a second lap here, I don't think. As now Harrison Holmes will begin his first, taking a slightly slower beginning to his lap, going out wide and then getting on the power. Here we go, on board with Harrison Holmes. To turn one, down to third gear he goes, flicks it in, nearly losing control of the rear. And then going to be on the ERS down here, down to 70%, and then he turns the battery off, using up Eau Rouge all the way down now to 40% he goes. And now DRS are deploying all the way down this straight here. 30.124 in the first sector. Purple, according to the F1 game, although we won't always necessarily trust the F1 game because it can be quite often be wrong. And he is going to abandon this lap. He's going to invalidate it here. And he will abandon. He won't be setting a time on this one. Has he fueled up to do a second run, I wonder, because he might well be able to do another. He only didn't even do half a lap on these tyres, so they still probably have a little bit of life left in them. You know, they've not been rinsed of their grip as much as other people's would have. Hello, Ajaman. How are you doing? How are you doing? As now, once again, Silly Sly Guy, the first of our drivers. Once again. Oh, okay. Right, there we go. Once again, Silly Sly Guy, the first to start. You're going to be the first to start another flying lap here on this one. Is there an echo? Is there? Okay. Good. Good, good. Right. Okay then. Anyway. Moving on. I think I've managed to root out all of the issues. This is what happens when you stream from your grandparents' kitchen. So, like I said, I am in the process of moving house. And I have no Wi-Fi at my home. So I am streaming from a kitchen. So there might well be a slight echo I've done my best to try and minimise it, but, you know, sometimes these things can happen. No, they are both in bed, I am afraid. I'm down in the kitchen, they are upstairs asleep. As anyway, Silly Sly Guy, beginning his second of the session. Can he go any better? Currently sat in 13th place. Going to be looking for a little better for FST than 13th place. Is now towards Eau Rouge he goes. Looks pretty clean so far. And he has a lot of battery to burn down the Kemmel Straight, which he will now use down to 50%. Half of his battery left. He's a tenth and a bit down, so it's not looking as good as originally thought for Silly Sly Guy. But that looked a little better through there. Absolutely using all of the racetrack which is available to him, as Tom Wolfgram gets a 5-place grid penalty for illegal blocking. We weren't able to see who he was blocking, but he will start 5 places lower than wherever he qualifies as now. Through the middle sector goes Silly Sly Guy once again. He still has 50% battery according to his wheel, as he is 300ths of a second up on his previous best. I mean, 300ths will potentially take him past Tom Wolfgram, but it won't be enough, I don't think, to do much more than that. As towards the line he goes now. Little bit of wiggle in the under braking for the bus stop chicane. Little wiggle on exit out to the line. Comes the Williams, the 140, 550 up to 8th place with that. So 5 positions gained with barely, not even a tenth of a second improvement there. That just shows you how close and competitive this field is, as Tachubi was 1.7 tenths down in the first 2 sectors, as Alejandro Lara puts in a 139.969. What a time from him there. Tachubi sets a 146.55. Next is going to be an RB. Another RB which doesn't go fast. That's Harrison Holmes now starting his time, is what it is. As we now go to a Simone Equestri once again. 148. Oliver Knott now comes up to the bus stop chicane. Can he challenge Alejandro Lourero's time? No, he can't. Thomas Kokeni putting a 140.1, only to get beaten by the Ferrari, V&T Ferrari, pretty much immediately. As now, by the way, Thomas Elia and Florian Fanzelter have set the exact same time. And Fanzelter is going for another lap. I don't think he has the ERS to do it, but he's damn well going to try. As we now ride with Rayan Camporsi, who is recharging. It looked for a minute like he might be on a lap. Is anybody on a lap? Noel, I don't think is. He doesn't have the ERS to go for another, at least. As now we'll go with Harrison Holmes, who is yet to set a time in this session. And now heads towards the split, the middle sector split. He is currently lurking around the 140.5s or so, somewhere around that ballpark from what I can gather. As, by the way, Alex Osina's retired a few moments ago. He will not. He'll be starting this race from dead last. As towards the final corner comes Harrison Holmes. Pretty clean through there, but he will box. He will not set a faster lap, as he invalidated. And now we just wait. Once again, it is a waiting game in this session. Most people on in-laps waiting to go for their final runs in a few moments' time. Which is something, of course, you don't get a lot of at Spa-Francorchamps, it being a 1 minute 40 lap time on a qualifying lap, and then on a charge lap it's obviously even slower than that, so you don't get much time here in a qualifying session at Spa. but you still get time to do 2 runs. And now everybody in to the pits. The only one going to be in or on the track was Giacomo Giletti, who is now back in the pit lane. So everybody, all 19 left in the session, waiting to go out for their final runs, which they will probably begin heading out for in a few moments' time. Here we go then. Once again, Silly Sly Guy first out on to the track. He is going to try and get a little bit more of a clear track than other drivers. He's got a nice gap to the RB behind him of Tachubi. So he's in a relatively nice position. He will need to slow down a little bit towards the end of the lap in order to not encounter any traffic on his lap, of course. But Silly Sly Guy once again finds himself around that 12th place mark. He was 13th after the first runs. After the second, he finds himself in 12th. But the man we will be keeping the three will be keeping a very keen eye on is Alejandro Loureiro, Oliver Knott, and Thomas Kenny. These are the 3 drivers who are very, very close to pole position. Alex Santana lurking in the background as well. With a good lap, he could well challenge the Red Bull in first place, who will be looking to go even faster. The only driver at the moment in the 1 minute 39s. So his pace looks absolutely blistering here today. As Silly Sly Guy has started his first of the session, we will be keeping an eye. We'll start with Oliver Knott, who comes across the line to start his final run of the session. Now, here we go. This is it for Oliver Knott. This is going to be his last one. It all comes down to this last run. As through turn 1 he goes, not using any ERS, keeping it nice and clean through there, and then burning down towards Eau Rouge. 76% left in the pack as for Eau Rouge very, very cleanly he goes. And now DRS will open. Now he's going to be burning his ERS all the way down towards this right-left complex. He is 400 for the second up according to the game's Delta. We'll keep an eye on Alejandro Loureiro and Thomas Kenny, who are both starting laps here. We will ride on board with the Ferrari, who is the furthest of the 3. Looking very good through here for Oliver Knott as he invalidates. That is it. That is going to be the end of his lap here today, or his qualifying here today. He's not going to be able to challenge for pole, as in the first sector. We can't see what Loureiro was doing, but he has still kept the lap valid. As now towards the middle sector split, we go. Silly Sly Guy has finished his time. An RB of Tachubi goes up to 4th place there. As now an Aston Martin of Dennis Langrock will go up to 4th place. Well, 140.2. Next will be the Ferrari of Oliver Knott, who comes into the pits. So it will be a Mercedes of Tom Wolfgram, who goes across up to 9th, or up to 12th place, sorry, as now his teammate Noel will come to the line. Can he go any faster? Up to the line he goes to 146. No improvement for him. Alejandro Loureiro sets a 139. 804. Provisional pole. Florian Fanzelter pushes himself up to second place provisionally. But what about his teammate, Thomas Kokeni? Can he go faster? It's a 140. 182. 4 thousandths off his previous best. As now Tamaseto Elia in 11th place. Up to the line he comes. He's going to get a good little tow through there. It's up to the line. 140. 203. P6 for the Aston Martin. As we... Here we go then. The grid order: Alejandro Loureiro, Florian Fanzelter, Oliver Knott, Tamas Kokeni, Alex Santana, Thomas Elia, Dennis Langrock, Tachubi, Rayan Camporsi, Sipos Ballas, Noah Raza, Josh Rothwell, Tom Wolfgram, Silly Sly Guy, Noel, Giacomo Giletti, Lewis Drager, Simone Equestri, Harrison Holmes, and Alex Osenas. Both of the last two did not set a lap time. So there we are. That is qualifying. We will be back in a few moments, ladies and gentlemen. Be back soon. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Apologies for the delayed break. We had to have a lobby reset, unfortunately, due to the 5-place grid penalty that Tom Wolfgram picked up. So unfortunately, we had to lobby reset. But here we go to the 5 red lights. And it's racing here in Belgium. It's a good start from Alejandro Loureiro in pole position. Florian Van Zelter comes across to cover Oliver Knott, who got a really good initial launch, but then bogged down in the second phase and is now under pressure from Tamasco Kenny and potentially even his teammate Alex Santana. As now Thomas Setuelia also alongside Alex Santana going down Upper Rouge side by side. They go. They're going to be side by side still down the Kemmel Straight. And now this is where of course, the slipstream is going to play its part as now Florian Van Zelter making a move for the lead round the outside. Alejandro Loureiro manages to defend it, is in the background. Alex Santana having to defend from Thomas Setuelia as Tachubi dropping places and spinning. Big contact between the two. And then there's a Williams round as well. Tachubi and Silly Sly Guy both going round there. Now Tamasco Kenny side by side with Oliver Knott. And just about the two Alpines managed to win this scrap as now Alex Santana moving himself past his VNT teammate. But they have not had a good start, as we will have a look at tyres. Everybody choosing the hard tyres. Absolutely no one else deviating from strategy, as now Zupots Ballas moves himself up to 9th place past Rayan Camporsi. But at the front, Alejandro Loureiro starting to break away from Van Zelter in second place. 9/10 stands the gap. He only, of course, needs another half a tenth or so, give or take, and he will be out of DRS on the Alpine, which, of course, Van Zelter has his teammate of Tamasco Kenny behind him, who would probably blast past him in order to try and stay within that 1 second range that Florian Van Zelter has not been able to stay in so far. 1.1 behind now as Thomas Setuelia moving himself past Oliver Knott, splitting the two Ferraris as Knott now gets a really good run towards Eau Rouge. He's not going to go for it though. Wasn't quite brave enough to go for it. Is now towards the straight we go. Here he comes around the outside at DRS all the way. Tamasco Kenny moves himself past his teammate. And now Oliver Knott tries to go back round the outside of Elia, and he can't quite do it. The Aston Martin manages to defend it really nicely through the first couple of corners. And now Tamasco Kenny has managed with DRS to get himself back in on Alejandro Loureiro. But it's still very rocky. 9/10 stands the gap, and he won't get any more DRS for at least another half a lap, because of course the next DRS zone is the first straight of the new lap. But he's managing to stay in pretty nicely at the moment. We're now moving ourselves down to Dennis Langrock, who is in pursuit of Oliver Knott. He has his teammate ahead of the VNT Ferrari in Thomas Setuelia, so these two maybe could be able to work together to try and move themselves up the order. As now here we go, Oliver Knott on the recharge. Dennis Langrock wasn't. Down the inside goes Langrock. That switches to the outside, which gives Oliver Knott just a slight advantage towards the start of the new lap. Lap 3 now strikes. Down the inside, it's going to go Dennis Langrock, I think. No, he backs out. He chooses to stay behind, but in all that fighting, it has allowed Thomas Setuelia to break the toe from Oliver Knott, which is, of course, going to make it far easier for Dennis Langrock to overtake down this straight. By the way, Josh Rothwell also going to join the party here, going for a very tight angle on the outside. Might even be able to try and challenge the Ferrari. He's going to get slightly trapped. These two battling is compromised. As now down the inside goes Josh Rothwell, manages to keep it alongside, but's going to have the worst line. Goes for the switchback, but it doesn't quite work out, unfortunately, and they all remain flying in formation, at least for now. As we'll head down to Noel, as down the inside he goes on Simone Equestri at the corner with no name, and manages to get it done. Up to 15th place he goes. And he will now set after Alex Osinas, who's actually had a relatively solid start, up from 20th place all the way to 14th. So looking pretty good at the moment is the ET8 Mercedes here. As now heading back to the front, we ride with Alejandro Loureiro, who still leads this Grand Prix as things stand. And now to Tamas Kokeni. This is his opportunity. He's getting ever so slightly closer each lap, using that DRS nicely, and he's starting to reel in the AMR ahead of him. As now Simona Equestri already into the pit lane. Is this for a wing change, I wonder? Yes, it is for a wing change. So he has obviously picked up some damage somewhere in the last couple of laps, which he feels he can't continue with. So he will have to change his wing, and that will probably drop him towards the back of the field, down to 20th place most likely. As now Noah Raza and Sipot Ballas fighting once again, and Noah Raza comes out on top in that one there, just about. And they have lost DRS, unfortunately, to Josh Rothwell ahead of them. So the gap stands at 1.2. They'll need a little bit of luck with fighting, and also some very good pace to get back in, because once you lose that 1 second toe and the DRS here at Spa-Francorchamps, it can prove completely and utterly fatal. As we now watch our race leader's teammate, Luis Drager, chasing Seapox Ballas. But he's unfortunately not quite able to get close enough at the moment. Noah Raza is starting to close that gap, but if he can't get into DRS soon, he will lose out all of the time he has just gained. As now back to the race at the front we go. Alejandro Loureiro still leads, but Tamas Kokeni slowly but surely reeling him in, but it's only by half a tenth or so each lap. But this is looking like the closest he has ever been through this part of the racetrack. Because now here we go. Tamas Kokeni not quite going to be able to get close enough. He's on his recharge at the moment, as is Fanzalter, as was Santana. So these guys not in a rush at the moment to try and overtake each other. They are just playing the long game at the moment. Of course, on the hards, they're going to be going to the medium tyres towards the end of this race. Probably around lap 14, 15, most likely. So they still have a little way to go on these tyres. So of course they need to take care of them. As now Luis Drager still close to the back of Seapox Ballas, but just can't get close enough to make a lunge. And that is one of the issues of not only Spa, but of the F1 game at the moment, is how difficult it can be to overtake once you find yourself in a DRS train. You just can't overtake, as we have a train down from 1st all the way to 8th, and the train from 9th down to 12th. And then we have a little bit of field split from there. It's now back to the battle for the race lead, or not particularly a battle. They're just, using DRS, pulling each other along at the moment, but it does look like Tamas Kokeni has much better resources in his locker, more energy to deal with this next lap than Alejandro Loureiro does. As now up Eau Rouge they go. He's still 7 tenths behind, so it's not as if Kokeni is gaining a huge amount, and he will get on his recharge here as well. Just playing the long game here, trying to drop as many people out of DRS as they can. I mean, they're close to doing it, or they were close to doing it on Dennis Langrock, and they're getting closer on Josh Rothwell in 8th place here. But other than that, there aren't particularly any battles. It's just this long old 8-car DRS train, and then we have a couple of other little battles here and there. But this is the one to watch at the moment, because anything could happen. And in the Pro Series it quite often does. You never know what is around the next corner, quite literally. As now, moving to Thomas Etuelia, he has a front row seat of everything going on ahead of him. And I mean, look at this. Thomas Kokeni, we'll go back to it, is the closest he has ever been to Alejandro Loureiro, just 3/10. And he has his teammate of Florian Van Zelter right behind him as well. And I mean, these two very well could pull off a double overtake here. They're going to have slipstream not only off the Red Bull, but Van Zelter will have it off his teammate as well, so double the strength of a slipstream as Alex Osinas retires in the pit lane. That is his race over after only 5 laps. As now here we go. Thomas Kokeni moves himself past. What about Florian Van Zelter? Can't quite get close enough to execute the overtake, but we have a change of leader, and it is the TRT driver of Thomas Kokeni who takes the race lead here today on lap 7 of 22. And now Florian Van Zelter will look to capitalise on this. He has his teammate in the lead. They have control of this race, these two. First and third, they are the closest matched team at the moment towards the top, with Santana and Not also matching them. But now Florian Van Zelter having a little think about a move. Not quite going for it there, but he definitely did well think about it. Not a conventional overtaking spot, let's say. It's not one you see people often go for a move in, and at the moment Florian Van Zelter faster in the middle sector than his previous best, suggesting there has been a bit of a step up in pace since Thomas Kokeni took over the lead of this race. But now here comes Alejandro Loureiro towards the bus stop chicane. Simona Questri picks up a 3-second penalty down the inside. Goes Florian Van Zelter, switching late. A little bit of contact between the two, they rub, and now Van Zelter will go for the switchback towards turn 1. He'll have the outside line, but he's not quite going to get alongside enough, so he'll have to stay behind at least for now. But of course he has his teammate of Thomas Kokeni in P1, so these two can try and coordinate it to try and get themselves into a 1-2 scenario. But unfortunately Florian Van Zelter does not have much battery, whereas Thomas Kokeni has plenty to burn down here. But it's not going to matter with the power of the DRS. He's just going to blast on past the TRT and back into the race lead here today. But now, the two TRTs once again back in the position they were in on lap 6 of 22, but once again they are still very close to the back of Alejandro Loureiro, so they can once again try to coordinate their attacks on the red AMR Red Bull here. But now Dennis Langrock getting closer to the back of Oliver Knott, who in turn is getting closer to Thomas Etuelia. These guys also another team battle. We have Red Bull versus Alpine for the podium positions, and then we have the 2 Ferraris versus the 2 Aston Martins for 4th down to 7th. Of course, Alejandro Loureiro's teammate in Luis Drager is unfortunately lagging down in 12th position as things stand. However, Loureiro bringing a good haul of points home for his team at AMR. As now we go to the top, because there is going to be another change of position for the race lead here as Kokeni, with the DRS, just blasts himself on past nice and comfortably. Absolutely no problems there, got it done before the braking zone, but now can Florian Van Zelter follow him on through. But we will go now to ET8 Noel, who is up to 13th place, got himself past Giacomo Giletti pretty easily there with the DRS once again, and that is where we're seeing all of the overtakes at the moment is through that section of the race track. And now Kokeni has all of a sudden switched on the burners because he is 9/10 ahead of Alejandro Loureiro here. He is all of a sudden going much faster than he previously was, and now it's up to the AMR to try and stay with this pace that Thomas Kokeni is setting, which at the moment is blisteringly quick, and the gap stands at just over 8.5 tenths, just under now. So he's just managed to stay with him at least for this DRS straight. With even the slightest of mistakes, Thomas Kokeni will capitalise, and Florian Van Zelter breathing down Loureiro's neck here will make it very hard for him in this one. As now Lovenot side by side with Dennis Langrock. Surely they don't try it. Up Eau Rouge, I think they're going to. Here we go, side by side. Langrock backs out. Chooses not to go for it. I don't think he fancied absolutely any of those shenanigans. As now, toward the end of Sector 1, they go. Alejandro Loureiro gets himself back past Kokeni up to first place. Once again, we're just seeing some big switches of race lead at the moment. No real battles, just switching on the DRS straight, playing it completely tactically as Giacomo Giletti gets himself back past Noel up to 13th place once again. Okay, as now Florian Van Zelter. This is the closest he has been to his teammate in Thomas Kokeni for a very long time. And this could be pretty beneficial for the two Alpines and the TRTs because, of course, they're on the same team. They can work together. It is a 2 versus 1 at the top of this race at the moment, which, of course, benefits TRT completely. But now we're going to move back to Josh Rothwell. This DRS train now, by the way, extends all the way down from 1st to 11th place, as Lewis Drager has now dropped away from it ever so slightly, but it extends from 1st down to 11th. Absolutely nobody wants to leave DRS of another driver, because that can be completely fatal, as we are seeing with Lewis Drager. Will keep an eye on the gap between himself and Tom Wolfgram, who is the final car of this DRS train at the moment, and we'll see how much time Drager actually loses to the back of this battle. And through there he lost about 0.4 of a second as Simona Equestri retires it in the pit lane, packs it up as well. He has decided it is not worth it to carry on. But now lap 11 of 22, and it's still the man who started on pole, Alejandro Loureiro, who leads this race. The real winners so far has been a tie between Josh Rothwell and Lewis Drager, both up 5 positions, but of course Rothwell in the points paying positions, whereas Drager is 2 positions off of that, unfortunately for him. As now we are probably heading towards the pit window in the next few laps. I reckon it's probably, if I had to guess, around somewhere between lap 14, 15, somewhere around that. Maybe a lap or so earlier, but I wouldn't say much earlier than that, as now Tomasetto Elia moving himself past Oliver Knott, who is once again under pressure this time from Josh Rothwell, who has got himself past. So Oliver Knott dropping all the way down to 7th place is now Noah Raza down the inside on Seapox Ballas and gets himself past pretty cleanly through there. As now towards Eau Rouge, he will be in 9th position. So gains FCT an extra point in the championship. And now, by the way, Dennis Langrock, this is the closest he has been to the car ahead of him for a very long time, as now DRS deploying all the way down here. He's going to get it done even before the braking zone. He comes across to try and cover a late dive, but Oliver Knott, in fact, does not go for it. So now Knott in 1 lap down from 5th place all the way down to 8th place, unfortunately for him. And back at the top, by the way, Loureiro has managed to maintain the lead for a couple of laps. As it's going to be interesting to see what happens when these guys box, which we are heading towards very, very soon. We look at that front right tyre of Thomas Kokeni. You can start to see the wear on all of our drivers here today. Those tyres are taking a beating. And of course, as we all know, wear in this game is quite a big issue. Not only, of course, four-wheel players, but for all people who love and play this game that we call F1 25. As now Lewis Drager and Noah Raza both into the pit lane after 12 laps. I feel like that could be a little early for the medium tyres, but we will see. As now there they go. They're going to rejoin in about 15th place, and they do. They'll rejoin in a relatively nice bit of clean air. As now Seapox Ballas and Tom Wolfgram going side by side, and Wolfgram picks up a 3-second penalty for corner cutting and picked up an illegal overtake, I would guess, because he has had to drop straight back behind Tom Wolfgram. There was probably potentially a little bit of contact between the two, which sent them spiraling off the racetrack, and they now rejoin back in the same position they were, but Wolfgram has picked up a 3-second penalty in all of that commotion. And now things starting to split up. Once again, Kokeni is 8.5 tenths behind our race leader. He needs to close that gap up a little bit once again in order to try and stick with him. When you pit here at Spa is really important, because the undercut is incredibly strong, but of course you do not want to get caught in any kind of traffic. As I say that, Loureiro blinks, comes into the pits. He's the only driver of this top battle, I believe, other than Oliver Knott, who is coming in to the pit lane. So it now is a Alpine 1-2. And the question now is, are they going to immediately try and cover Loureiro off? Or are they going to try and go a couple of extra laps to try and get a little bit of a tyre offset on the AMR driver? Because the tyre offset is also very powerful. As now Rayan Camporsi, on those new medium tyres, sets the fastest lap of the race. He is now 9 tenths behind Silly Sly Guy, who is on 12 lap old tyres and will probably have to come into the pits again. As we now watch Alejandro Loureiro working his way through all of this traffic, and he now comes up to Giacomo Giletti. As now through Pawn, you can see the grip difference, and he's just going to pull round the outside through Pawn. Absolutely no contest. Up to 9th place he goes. in incredibly simple fashion. As now, this is the interesting one. Do the Alpines... it's going to be Thomas Kenny probably who comes in first, if I had to guess. Of course, being the leading of the two Alpines, he gets priority, but no, he doesn't. Neither of the two Alpines choose to go into the pits, as Thomas Elia and Josh Rothwell both do, but everyone else currently staying out, things staying relatively calm as things stand. We will see what the gap, Thomas Elia's gap to Alejandro Lerrero looks like. Of course, they were a couple of seconds behind total, and they're going to be a pretty similar distance, and they're going to come out behind a big gaggle of traffic. They rejoin just behind Oliver Knott, but behind, as I said, a big gaggle of traffic, which they are going to have to clear before they can even think about getting themselves back towards the AMR of Lerrero, as Camporsi sets fastest lap. Once again, second lap in a row that he has done that. As now back towards the top we go. Florian Van Zelter has got himself past Tamasco Kenny, maybe in preparation for a pit stop this lap. Potentially a little bit of tactics, team tactics going on there. And maybe Van Zelter wanting to go in before Kenny, as Noah Raza going very wide there through Pullon. Potentially could have been a track limit warning for him. Now Thomas Elia gets himself past Giacomo Giletti at the same point that Alejandro Lerrero did, of course. And now Elia finds himself behind Noah Raza, who is on 2 lap older tyres. I know 2 laps doesn't sound like much, but it will be a relatively big difference towards the end of this race, as now Oliver Knott under pressure once again. Noah Raza trying to put his nose in, going to be on the outside for the bus stop chicane. Oh my word, this could go completely wrong. Down the inside, tries to go Oliver Knott. It's going to be Noah Raza on the inside, which will switch to the outside, and now Thomas Elia trying to get himself past Oliver Knott. All of this chaos kicking off here. Thomas Elia switching to the inside line. Going to be a free wide into turn 1. There's a bump between the free Oliver Knott. Goes into Noel, and all of this is kicking off. Absolutely, oh my word. And now Josh Rothwell all of a sudden finds himself involved. Alex Santana rejoins just behind Josh Rothwell, who is going to get overtaken here. Oliver Knott gets himself past Thomas Elia once again, and now here we go once again towards here around the outside goes Alex Santana, trying to get himself right behind his teammate. It's going to be the outside line once again, and it's going to be the outside line for the corner with no name as well. And now Josh Rothwell going to be putting Alex Santana under pressure as well. That has not gone well, trying to overtake Thomas Elia for Alex Santana. A little bit of contact, but the Ferrari will maintain the position. Oh my word, it all kicked off through there. Absolutely everyone wanted a piece of that, a piece of the pie in the overtaking there, as Tachubi moves himself past Lewis Drager, who is an AI, it would appear. But now at the front, the 2 Alpines surely have to come in soon. This surely has to be relatively soon for them. Drager has rejoined now. But here we go. Van Zelter not going to come in. Kokeni not going to come in. What are you waiting for? They're obviously going for a tyre offset, but the question is, will it work? Will there be enough laps in order to take advantage of such an offset? As now Santana moves himself up to 8th place, gets himself past Thomas Elia, who's going to come back at him down the inside into turn 1. Alex Santana going to try and stick it around the outside. Elia gets a good exit, but Alex Santana gets an even better one, uses his ERS, which he had much more of, and gets himself back past the TES of Thomas Elia. And now towards the right-left complex. Josh Rothwell going to try and go around the outside of Elia. It's not quite going to work, unfortunately. Elia braking that a little bit later, and that was enough to maintain the position. But now a switch of positions between the 2 Ferraris. Alex Santana on those newer tyres is going to try and attack Noah Raza here. and with a 3-lap tyre offset, that is quite a difference. I mean, let's look at this. So, at the front, Loureiro is only about 8 seconds behind the race lead. So, he's had a very, very good undercut here so far, as now you see him moving himself past Seapox Ballas, who is still out as well. The 2 Alpines still staying out. Is there rain potentially on the way? Those clouds starting to get ever so slightly darker, but is it the rain? If it is going to rain, is it going to come soon enough for the 2 Alpine strategy to work? Please, no incidents. I don't want to make reports again. Yeah, don't use ChatGPT to steward incidents. That's probably not a good idea. I don't think AI is quite smart enough for those kind of things just yet. As now here we go, Alex Santana down the Kemmel Straight. He's going to get himself past the Sauber of Noah Raza pretty comfortably. And now the question is, can Oliver not follow suit in this one? And I mean, you look at the sky. Why TRT going so long? I think it's going to rain. I mean, you look at the sky and it is getting pretty damn dark. But the thing is, I don't think the rain is coming soon enough for Thomas Kokeni and Florian Fanzelter's strategy to work here in this one. Because I think by the time the rain comes, Loureiro on those much newer tyres will just blast past them. I mean, he's only, what, 6.5 seconds behind them on track at the moment? As now Thomas Setuelia close behind Oliver Knott, and is gaining on Oliver Knott as well toward the bus stop chicane. Is he going to think about a lunge? Here we go. He's going to go for it. Down the inside he goes. He could now potentially, if he gets this move done, try and challenge Noah Raza, as there's a little bit of contact. Oliver Knott giving him the absolute barge, and Thomas Setuelia has to drop behind that hind. As a result, Alex Santana sets fastest lap of the race. He is catching Seapox Ballas at a rate of knots, and he is also catching Alejandro Loureiro ahead of him. As Fanzelter gets himself past Kokeni once again, these two just switching, using DRS to try and stay ahead of Dennis Langrock, who is 2.2 back, and then 2.5 behind him is Alejandro Loureiro, who is getting closer and closer. And now lap 19 of 22. 3.5 laps to go. I don't think this rain has come soon enough for the TRT drivers. I think they've left it far too late. But, you know, it could absolutely chuck it down, and it could work. But you never know. You never know. And we will ride on board with Alejandro Loureiro. As you see Langrock coming into view, every single corner he's getting closer and closer, and in turn gaining. As there we are, the rain has arrived. Lap 19 of 22, it has arrived, but has it come too late for the TRT strategy to work here? As they come in. Florian Fanzelter into the pits immediately. Thomas Kokeni is going to stay out here. It looks relatively hard. It could well work. The question is now, how quickly does this track get wet? How quickly will it get wet for the two drivers, the two TRTs who have braved the strategy and gone brave? Don't go on to mediums. No, going on to mediums is not a good idea. Not when it is starting to rain. You may as well just try the intermediates. I mean, they were going to drop out of the points anyway. Or Fanzelter barely just stayed in the pits. Or in the points, sorry. Because others boxed. As all of a sudden, That does look quite wet. And I mean, they're not exactly looking quick. Let's watch. Let's have a look at Florian van Zelter's delta to Tom Wolfgram ahead. I mean, it's coming down, but it's not coming down considerably yet. So, do we think that Loureiro might try and stay out? I wonder. I don't think it's the strat, but you never know, you never know. As now Seapox Ballas moving himself past Tachubi. 19-lap-old hard tyres are not going to be feeling good in these wet conditions. There is going to be absolutely no grip from those tyres. As now into the pits comes Thomas Kokeni. Alejandro Loureiro is going to stay out. He's staying out. And I think that is going to be potentially a wrong decision, because it is all of a sudden looking very, very wet. And now the TRT strategy suddenly looks genius, because here comes Florian van Zelter. Thomas Kokeni's going to come out ahead of his teammate pretty comfortably, or to come out behind. Van Zelter comes out, is ahead of his teammate, and by 1.6 seconds. So these Inters are faster, but are they faster by enough as Tachubi retires it in the pit lane? And oh my gosh, look how wet it looks all of a sudden, as now Thomas Kokeni is going to try and get himself past Dennis Langrock, who's weaving, trying to avoid getting overtaken here. It's going to work. He's not quite going to be able to work a move on the Aston Martin. Ahead of him is now Florian van Zelter, moving himself past Noah Raza, and now goes for a move on Oliver Knott as well. And all of a sudden, the two Alpines, the TRTs, look like they are primed potentially for a race victory, because Loureiro is losing so much time to the TRT behind him. He needs to step on the throttle, but he can't do that because these medium tyres just have no grip. You can see him sliding absolutely everywhere. TRT might have cooked. Yeah, they've definitely cooked here. I mean, the gap now is what, 6.5 seconds. He could have that by a Rouge at this rate. I mean, it's already 5 seconds. Look at this. This is what a strategy from TRT. It's just now is Dennis Langrock. Sorry, I've got to give Dennis Langrock credit as well, because he is also one of those who stayed out. As now, here comes Thomas Kokeni trying to look for a move on Dennis Langrock. As now round the outside, he will try. It's not quite going to work. Langrock defending this position with his absolute life. But I think Florian van Zelter could well come tumbling down this order. Not Florian van Zelter, sorry. Alejandro Loureiro could come tumbling down this order, because he all of a sudden has Florian van Zelter right behind him. As no Oppo Rouge, you will see the pace difference between the Inters and the mediums. Look at the traction difference. Loureiro sliding absolutely everywhere. He will try to defend it, but I don't think he has the tools at all to try it. As now here we go to the braking zone. You can see Florian van Zelter just going to buy his time, pick his opportunity, as here it is, round the outside he goes. So much more traction, and there we go. Florian van Zelter back into the race lead. In the background, Thomas Kokeni got himself past Dennis Langrock, and now it's looking like a 1-2. Could be on the cards for TRT. As now Loureiro is dropping like a fly all of a sudden. Noel retires from the session. We've had a lot of retirements in the last couple of laps, but now the question is, can Santana get himself past Loureiro? The gap stands at 5.2. I think he will gain that probably quite easily, as, oh my word, look how wet it has got all of a sudden. It has gotten so wet, but we will head to Florian van Zelter, our race leader, and our probably going to be our race winner. What a strategy from TRT. They have absolutely masterminded that. They didn't necessarily look like they had it on the cards to beat Alejandro Loureiro today, but they've done it on strategy, and they're going to do it with both cars on the podium in a 1-2. Florian Fanzelter wins from Thomas Kenny, a 1-2 for TRT. Dennis Langrock brings home P3 for TES. It's going to be Alex Santana 4th. He managed to get Alejandro Lorero, who is going to come home P5 on those medium tyres. Supox Ballas comes home 6th. Thomas Setuelia 7th. Josh Rothwell 7th. Tom Wolfgram 9th. Lewis Drager, after disconnecting, will come home to bring a point for AMR. It's going to be Noah Razza. No, it's not. It's going to be Giacomo Giletti 11th. Noah Razza drops a position and drops another. Oliver Knott 12th. Noah Razza 13th because of his penalty. Harrison Holmes will come home in 14th. And then it will be Silly Sly Guy in 15th. And then we lost Noel, Rayan Comporsi, Tuchubi, Simone Equestri, and Alex O. Cenas. But here we go. Silly Sly Guy will be the last to cross the line, and that is the end of the race there, ladies and gentlemen. What a strategy from TRT, winning that race purely, well, not purely, but a lot of their win comes from that incredible strategy that they decided to go for a 1-2 for TRT. And here is the podium for round 6 at Belgium. A brilliant race from our top 3, and all of these 3 are the ones who decided to stay out. They waited it until the rain, boxed early, and then found themselves on the podium. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen, for round 6 here at Spa. Next week, we will head to China for the Chinese Grand Prix. What a race that will be. And then from there, we head to Britain for Silverstone, Spain, Monza, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi. Oh, thank you. Oh my God. Thank you all very much for joining me. I've been Owen Baldero, and I will see you all next week. Goodbye.